Okay, we're gonna show, I've got a stock here. You can't see it right now because I'm kind of in between. I'm gonna show you how I bed the pillars into a real crusty stock. A pretty messed up scenario here, but we're gonna make this thing stout. We're gonna make it tight. I'm gonna start by it's way in the distance over here, but I'm gonna show you how I mix my epoxy. I use large bottles of Brownells, and I do it on my scale. I just squirt in about as much as I need. The thing is, this stuff is expensive, and to mix it right, you're supposed to do it at 4:1 by volume, and to find volumetric measures that you can do small portions with is really, really hard. So here I just squirted it onto my scale. You can't read it, but trust me, it says 87.1. I'm waving my hands around, so it's up to 87.14 right now, but 87.1. So I take 87.1 in my calculator times 0.263. It's 4:1 by volume, but I masked this stuff out and I found out that the correct by weight, what has worked for me, is instead of using 0.250 to use 0.263. So I take the weight of my epoxy, I multiply by 0.263, and it comes up 22.9. So it needs 22.9 grains of hardener. But I just turn around and add the weight back to it, 87.1. 87.1, it's now reading 0.14, but anyway. So I come up with a total of 110 grains of material. Now all I have to do is take my catalyst, my hardener, and run this up to 110.2. Ooh, I went clear to 111. But that's okay. I got a little tiny amount of a nicely liquid epoxy here. It's going to mix with some bubbles in it because I'm in a rush and I'm videotaping, and I don't care because this is all I want to do is get it moving, get it working amongst itself while I reset the cameras and change my lighting here, because I wanted to do this in an uninterrupted fashion. I think I've come up with a pretty rational way of applying epoxy that hopefully other people can use. So now this is going to sit while I get the camera moved over, get the lights on correctly. I could do it like that, but I'm going to add some light. We're going to heat this place up. The camera should adjust nicely. We're going to get lots of light on this subject. I'm going to mix again some more here. This is not the proper way to mix epoxy. There's nothing right about this, but all I'm doing is gluing these pillars in. And what I did off camera, I have a permanently affixed multi-tool here with a foot pedal on the floor. And I just threw a little drill bit in here and went punch, 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 punch. Now, I was going to stop short because these have got incised rings around them, which I did in the lathe. But I decided instead to use my fix-all here. I just punched all the way through and I put silly putty on the bottom side. Boom, boom, sealed up. Theoretically, I'm going to stick this in here. You can't even see what I'm doing. Well, I'm not going to tighten that now. Silly putty has got a lot of uses. I go through quite a bit of it. So we'll set that aside. Give this another mix. Got plenty of time on our video. I just don't want to bore you stiffly, and I'm kind of anal. I have quite an epoxy mixing sequence that I go through. I make all of my own bedding compounds, and I want it to heat at a certain rate. In this case, I want it to heat fairly slowly, and I want it to be very liquid, because I'm going to do, this is the part that I'm filming to let you see. What I did is I went out and bought a gross, well, more than a gross, I don't know, it's like 1,000,000 of these. It's a big old bag of these pipettes, and I have found these to be wicked useful around the epoxy. So because these are, now just, this is a stock that I showed in an earlier video. It's kind of a, it's a hand laid stock. It's light. It seems like a decent stock overall. One thing I did notice is that this area around here is solid, rock hard epoxy with very little flock in it. Now I don't know if the person who was working on this stock before I got to it had hogged this out and filled it with epoxy, but there's no, the rest of the stock is either hollow or flock filled. I didn't try to scrape this. This is the way it came. But this is pretty stout stuff in here. It's just that I wanted a better transfer for the lifting forces that I'm talking about, because I am going to epoxy a chassis into this thing. But before I do that, okay, this is starting to make a little heat now. That's what I've been waiting for. As soon as it starts to heat, it gains a little liquidity. It gets a little looser, and it also starts to catalyze. So now you pinch this bad boy right down tight, stick it in there, get it moving, and then let it start to suck. My phone is beepity beeping. It's end of day here. So while this is sucking, I'm going to go ahead and answer some texts, or at least check them. I got Cruz checking in. Pictures. Pictures of a correction notice out on a job site. We'll wait. It's Friday night. Forget about all y'alls. We'll worry about that Monday. So, this is filling up nicely. We're sucking that epoxy up into this pipette. Getting a loaded pipette out of the deal. I should have checked. I grabbed up I've got a little bundle of assorted crap here. Had some drill bits and stuff in it, and I grabbed a drill bit that I thought was the appropriate size. I hope the tip of this pipette goes down in here, because if it's not the appropriate size, there we go. This is what I'm looking for. So, see what I'm doing here? I pipette this stuff in, it kind of pressurizes around, and I want to get it so that I'm oozing out of all the holes. That means that I've gotten complete permeation. I want to keep going into this hole. Well, I thought that I was going to. Maybe I'll try here. Trying to get transfer from hole to hole. Oop, there it's starting to pump up out. There it comes, there it comes, there it comes. Okay, I'm going to leave this sit for a minute while I go over here. I have achieved transfer to all but one of the holes over there. I'm not sure that you can see this, but that's not important to me. I can show it to you after the fact. What is important to me is to get this stuff in here. Whoop, this one is starting to transfer out the corners. I need to get feedback from hole to hole. That assures me that I'm getting permeation full depth and all the way around. This one is still taking epoxy like a monkey. Ah, here we go. Now we're starting to fill up. So I'm going to leave that sit. We pumped into there. I went into here and I felt it. I started to push and it's coming up through that hole right there. See if we've got it in this hole yet. See, now I'm pushing it into that hole and you can't see it, but it's pushing up out of this hole. So that means it's going there. See how it's oozing there? We're getting ooze. We've got permeation all the way around that pillar. Now this one, oh, whoa, whoa, there. As soon as I started to push on this hole here, it oozed up out of this one. So again, this one we have achieved full permeation. So I'm going to turn this, get it leveled out, check my leakers on the bottom. They're good. No leakage. Okay. So, these little pipettes are invaluable for putting epoxy into, pressuring into situations like this. I use them for bedding pillars. This is what I would call a pre-bed, but I want to make sure that I get these pillars pre-bedded and set. Now I can flip it over, bed the bottom in, rough it up, and I'm going to actually epoxy the chassis into the bottom side. And then after the bottom is completed, the pillars are in, the chassis assembly is epoxied up from the bottom side and rock solid. Now I can go start and do all my bedding procedure here on top, and everything flows from that in a just straightforward fashion. So it's a 3-part or a 5-part or a 10-part. I don't care how many times it takes to get me prepped up to where now I can do a epoxy bedding job up here and get everything to lay down completely stress-free and lock this to the barrel assembly so that they act as I'm going to keep using this tuning fork thing. It's how I picture it. It's what I think it is. It's what I think is important. And it works for me. I'm able to make guns shoot in a ludicrous fashion. So I'm sharing it just because this way other people can do the same thing. Find out if it works for them. That's I'm not about hiding anything. I'll never sell enough of these guns to make any money or to care about that as one way or the other as a business, because they're kind of a labor of love. Now, if I got to the point where I could do like Caffey does and sell a gun for 10 grand like he does with his 22s, maybe that would work. But I'm not Bill Caffey. So I don't have his reputation. I'm just sending this out into the public domain so that people can, if nothing else, just get some ideas. You don't have to build anything the way I do. That's immaterial to me. But if you can get one good idea about applying epoxy, one good idea about anything from watching these videos, then I've passed on something to posterity from the years and years and years I've spent diddling around with this stuff. So that's my big thing. These are now bedded in. Sounds like we've got family stuff going tonight. It's a Friday night. So I'm going to go ahead and let this set up. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll flip it over. We'll bed that chassis assembly in. Maybe I'll grind on that a little bit tonight, get it roughened up and ready. And thanks for watching this part. Hopefully this will help you out somewhere down the road.